I'm Barbara Lucas, and welcome to the Green Room, where we discuss ways to green up our world. 17 years ago, residents of Ann Arbor passed a 30-year millage to preserve open space and parkland. Here today to talk with us is Remy Long, who manages the City of Ann Arbor's Greenbelt program. Remy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So I've had a really interesting time reading about this, and tell me if I've got this right. If this is the City of Ann Arbor, and this is the area around it that's less developed, this is the Greenbelt, right? Mm-hmm. And you're seeking to preserve parcels around here, and also there's parklands within the city. But today we're just going to be talking about the Greenbelt.
Yeah, correct. So the millage is divided into two separate initiatives. One is 2/3 of the millage funding that was passed in 2003 is allocated toward land preservation efforts in the Greenbelt district outside the city, and then 1/3 of the money is dedicated toward parkland acquisitions in the city. But there's a lot going on out in the Greenbelt district, so it'd be great to just focus on that for today.
Okay, great. So within the Greenbelt, there's also different types of land. Mm-hmm. Let's start out with farmland. Mm-hmm. So what kind of losses have we been seeing with farmland in our area?
It's been significant. I mean, the landscape in Michigan has changed so much over the decades and centuries, but since 1935, Washtenaw County alone has lost over 230,000 acres of farmland, I believe.
That might correspond. I read that our county lost more than half its farmland since 1940.
Yeah.
Similar.
Yeah.
So why should we care about this loss of farmland?
There's a few factors to that. One is this is the most fundamental piece of food security and local food systems is actually having land available to farm. Mm-hmm. And I think that the City of Ann Arbor residents place a high value on local food systems and commodities being available. So to have those a short drive from the city limits is very important. Mm-hmm. For a successful local food system. And then as well, Michigan prides itself on rural character and preserving that rural character, and it's amazing that exiting the city limits without a program like the Greenbelt spearheading the preservation of some of these very important farms in the community, both to suburban and urban residents. Without a program like this, they may have been lost. And now there's over 6,000 acres for residents to just leave a short distance and be able to see. So keeping those intact and available for future generations is just, there was a high priority placed on that in the community.
I read that the potential, the amount of land you've preserved so far has the potential to produce enough food to feed over 55,000 people each year.
Yeah,
so talking of food security.
Absolutely. And if we're only 15 years through the 30-year millage, we have the opportunity to potentially double that land base.
And also supporting farming as a livelihood for young farmers, is that important? Yeah,
so the Greenbelt Advisory Commission, which is the commission appointed by City Council to make strategic recommendations on how the program is run and what land acquisition projects to pursue, recently performed a strategic planning update that gathered a lot of community input on what are the priorities of the program. Protecting land is one thing, and dollars and acres are only one message that can be conveyed. How much have we preserved and how much have we invested in that preservation effort? But there are these secondary and tertiary benefits of this work that aren't captured in those numbers. And it's that when we preserve these farms, we're removing development rights from the equation of that land's value, and therefore lowering its value. And many farmers, I get lots of calls, and I know lots of other conservation groups across the country get calls all the time from new and beginning farmers that want to make a go at this livelihood. But land access, affordable land access, is the #1 barrier to starting a successful farm operation. So if we've removed those development rights from the equation and made it more affordable for beginning farmers to access, we're helping promote a new generation of farmers seeking secure land tenure.
And we're going to need them because so many farmers are retiring, right?
Yeah. I think the average age of the Michigan farmer is over 65.
Wow.
So
I'm surprised they're able to keep farming. It's a very rigorous job.
mhm.
So what kind of farmlands do you prioritize when you're looking for farms?
Really, the largest consideration, I'd say, is prime agricultural soils. It takes Mother Earth 500 years to create an inch of topsoil. So if you have an inch of prime topsoil and you have those soils that function very well with a high capacity to output a lot of caloric value and maintain that productivity, that's a really rare feature in the environment. And so we are lucky to have so many in our area, but we've lost a lot too. Prime soils are also often nice to build on. They drain well, and so they can be viable building sites. So it's a balance between seeking prime soils as well as size matters in this regard. You know, it's the same amount of work on our end to protect 5 acres as it would be to protect 500 acres. The price is a lot different, but the paperwork's all the same. So we are trying to seek the protection of large established farms that have the opportunity to be that fundamental piece of a future farming success in the future. So while you can produce a lot of food on just 5 acres, we're seeking to build large blocks of protected land so that these farming communities surrounding Ann Arbor aren't fragmented in the future. A lot of farmers share resources. They share implements, tractors, whatever it is, and knowledge. And if you have one protected farm over here and another over here with nothing connecting them, they might lose over time their ability to have a cohesive farming community sharing those resources. So we focus on large blocks of protected land.
Yeah, I know back in the old days they used to share threshing machines and all that stuff.
Still goes on.
Makes sense. Let's switch to open spaces. Now, what types do you prioritize for that?
The strategic plan tries to place an emphasis on open spaces that will either provide recreational opportunities to the public. It's not privately conserved, so any of the city residents or surrounding residents can go and enjoy and explore those areas. A lot of times those areas are prioritized in terms of biodiversity. But in terms of private land protection, we'd really look to do private land protection on a parcel that has some source water protection benefit. Back when the millage was being considered, one of the visionary reasons for passing the millage was to safeguard the city's drinking water. The city gets its drinking water from the Huron River, and we can protect land and open space upstream of the river to help with that natural filtration of the water coming into our watershed. So
wetlands might be a priority?
Wetlands.
Those sponges, those filtering sponges?
Right. Fens, any tributaries that where through its preservation we can reduce the chance that some of those riparian buffers are harmed in any way. Those are lands that we're going to prioritize protection of.
And I suppose woodlands might capture and store carbon, so that would be a good thing.
Exactly.
And having spaces that are contiguous for wildlife, because they need to, you were mentioning before migrating birds. I suppose they might need large tracts instead of just tiny little places. Otherwise, they're going to keep on going, looking for something better.
Absolutely. Migratory bird habitat is so important. And when you look at the first map of the Greenbelt district in the year 2000, there's a lot of empty space when it comes to the protected land on the map. But when you look at it today, it's a really impressive map that has a lot of green space that's been permanently added to it. But now the strategy in the next 15 years through this 30-year millage is to really help connect and build upon those and create those green corridors, create migratory bird habitat where it's sort of it's a viable leapfrog scenario where they can go place to place and have these patch habitats that are meaningful to their species. So there's a lot of different ways to consider parcel acquisitions for different species, but overall connectivity is a huge component of what we do.
So if a landowner wants to consider this program, what are some of their options for having their land preserved?
Well, they live in a unique area in the United States, honestly. When you look across the U.S., there might be 1 or 2 land conservation programs available to a landowner. There might be none. But here, the city of Ann Arbor decided to invest in regional land conservation. Washtenaw County has a millage for land conservation. Scioto Township, Ann Arbor Township, Webster Township all have their own township level millages for land conservation. And then there are 2 nonprofit land conservancies operating in this area. The density of programming and the investment being made is truly phenomenal. And it shows on the map what's
so
been
would they
accomplished.
sell their property, or would they sell just the development rights?
They could do either. It depends, as I mentioned, all of those programs that exist locally, depending on the location of their property, they could apply to any of them if they qualify. But it's up to the landowner to decide what they want to do. Some want to offload the asset and just say, I want to be done with my land and see it be made a public preserve. Or some say, I want to farm it, I want to keep it, but I want to realize that value of the development rights now and then leave this world knowing my farm's going to be a farm forever.
So they'd maintain the title and they could sell it, but the development rights would always be owned by the city or the Greenbelt program.
Yeah. To clarify, the best way to think of it is when you own private property, you own a bundle of sticks, and each stick represents a right you have to that property. Some subset of that bundle is the development rights, the things that could potentially harm that property through mining, development, subdivision, and all of those resource extraction or destruction activities. And so what working with the Greenbelt or any of these other programs does is it places a conservation easement on the property, and that conservation easement removes that bundle of development rights from the equation. And it's not that it's locked in a safe and one day someone in a nefarious scheme could undo it and take them all out and sell them back out in the open market. It's actually more accurate to say, I'd say that bundle of sticks has been thrown in the fire. It's gone forever.
Interesting.
So and they get to maintain the other rights that they had and continue to enjoy their property, farm it, recreate, and pass it on to their heirs or sell it on the open market. It's still their private property.
And you can write into it that they can still cut down their trees for firewood or whatever, depending on how they write it. So how does this make good financial sense for the taxpayers of Ann Arbor? Are they getting a good deal? Or?
Well, there's been considerable leverage of the taxpayers' dollars. One, I'd say the Greenbelt's protected over $70 million worth of real estate, and to protect that, only $24 million worth of City of Ann Arbor taxpayer dollars have been used. We've secured over $11 million in federal grant funding, and then the rest of our local funding comes from those other local partners that I mentioned. So we're highly collaborative. And on average, the Greenbelt program secures 53% matching funds for the 47 we've put in for our acquisitions. So one, we're being responsible stewards of the taxpayer dollars to leverage and stretch them as far as they can possibly go. But two, those ecosystem services and green infrastructure benefits of these protected properties, while they're not all open to the public and they are private property, they are performing services that are relatively invisible to the eye, but have a high dollar value if you were to calculate the carbon sequestration, the water filtration benefits.
Good points. So who are the deciders? Who makes the decisions on what properties get preserved?
Not me. That's the big thing. I'm just a facilitator.
Okay.
So it's important to note that I'm not a city employee. I work for a national nonprofit called the Conservation Fund. And when the Greenbelt millage passed, the city realized it didn't have the internal expertise to run a conservation program of this level. So they did put out an RFP to different organizations across the nation who can run this, and the Conservation Fund, the outfit I work for, bid on it and has been administering the Greenbelt program on the city's behalf since 2005. I didn't know that. So I look like a city employee, I talk like a city employee, I have a badge and everything, but I'm not. I'm a contractor embedded in City Hall, and 100% of my time is dedicated to administering the program. So I facilitate, but City Council first established the Greenbelt Advisory Commission, who helps make recommendations and provide strategy and feedback on anything I'm suggesting we may explore as a program. And they vet applications initially. But the ultimate decider is City Council.
Okay.
The Greenbelt Advisory Commission can say, we feel this is a great project, we feel we've brought the matching funds to the table that make this a viable and good use of our taxpayer dollars, and the council can agree or disagree, and so far we have a clean track record. We've gotten 67 projects approved by City Council.
Wow,
Yep.
that's great.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen after the 30 years is up?
It's a great question. We need to be reflective and ask ourselves, have the goals that we set been achieved? Is there more? Are there more goals, additional goals, or an expansion of those that still needs to be achieved? And additional revenue could really help with achieving those goals. But ultimately, at the very least, I think we need to celebrate.
Yeah.
Like I said, you look across the country, very few cities have decided we want to levy a tax against ourselves to fund regional land preservation efforts. The pioneering vision that is the Ann Arbor Greenbelt needs to be more well understood and more well appreciated in terms of the success it represents, and the forethought that its beginners or the folks that pushed this idea initially really were bringing to the city, and the regional planning impact that it's had. So I think it's a huge success. I think because it's private land, that's being protected largely, it somewhat is invisible. It's this program where the impact remains unseen a lot of times. So it's on me to do a better job of getting out into the public and having conversations like this.
Yeah, well, this has been great. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for all the great work you're doing on this.
Yeah,
Thanks for coming today.
I really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
For this and all our Green Room shows, please go to washtenaw.org/greenroom. Thanks for joining us here in the Green Room.